Welcome to Cultivate with Jessica Taghap, a new podcast exploring different art forms and their creative processes through interviews with some of the most exciting artists working today. I first met Holly Kaplan during this past summer's Asian American International Film Festival, and she was kind enough to set aside some time to chat with me about her short film, Sunflower Girl. Along with the film star Malea Tjandrawidjaja, we talked about the delicate transitional phase of the tween years, the film's casting process, and the impact of the recent wave of Asian American and Asian-centered films. And with that, let's start the show. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of start off with a bit of background in terms of how the film got started, and sort of the filming process, what that was like.
Yeah, I could just jump in and say, to go back to when the idea started was I wrote it during COVID quarantine. I moved back from LA to New York, and I had this idea after walking around in my neighborhood I grew up in here in New York. And I didn't start actually writing the script until 2021. I was in this Sundance class online, and I wrote the short script in there, and all my peers and the professors that I had were oh yeah, you should definitely make this film. This should be actually made into a real film, not just a script. And then from there I started working with my producer, who I went to elementary school with in New York, Seika, and we started applying to grants, and we got the grant from Nalip and Netflix in 2022. And that was when we got the green light, and that summer was when we started casting, and we went into production in the fall. And it's taken about a year, I guess, from when we started shooting in September of 2022 to then premiering in October of last year.
Wow. Um, wow, that's great. So was it at all, how much of it was autobiographical from your experience, or if at all?
Yeah, I think it's a fusion of fiction and being autobiographical. Nothing is based on actual reality or real people's names or anything, or real people, where it's I grew up here and it was inspired by people I knew, who I grew up with, going to school. And my mom, and her family, who immigrated from Hong Kong, her grandfather owned a not a dry, it was a Chinese hand laundry, but nowadays that would be a dry cleaner instead, because there's not really any hand laundries. So that's kind of where the setting for Rosie's world comes in, and then the people she knows and who she is more a fusion of me and my mom growing up with her and her little sister. So it's kind of a combination of family history and my life growing up here.
Yeah, you definitely depict a very sort of certain time and place, I feel like, in a very kind of realistic way. So tell me a bit about casting Malea and how that came about, because she's such a presence on screen. So I just wanted to know a little bit about how that came about, casting each of the kids, because there's also a couple of kids in there, her little sister and the two boys. So you can tell me a little bit.
Yeah, this is actually really serendipitous, and I don't think I actually ever shared this story with Malea and her family, but I actually had gotten free tickets 2 years ago to a screening from Asian Cinevision for After Yang. And
Oh
it
wow.
was yeah, my friend won tickets, and they were like, "Can't go, do you want to go?" And I went by myself. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I really want to watch this movie." And it was in the Asian Cinevision screening I saw was it was like the first time I was actually like introduced to Malea, and I was like, oh wow, like she's like incredible, like what an amazing actress. And that summer, like my a producer and like casting director were like, oh, like can you think of any like really like great actors that you've like seen recently? And I was like, I just saw After Yang, and I like mentioned Malea, and then they reached out to her team, and that's like kind of the beginning of that whole story. Was it was like so faded, and then the boys, Cairo was like Instagram, like his mom saw like an Instagram post like for casting call, and she was like, oh, my son like is perfect, like he sounds like this character. And he's from Florida, so that was like, you know, how we got that. And Daniel, he's a skater, he grew up here, and he skated at this like skate park, and the owner contacted us, so he was like a street cast. This was like his first role, and now he's like he wants to like kind of pursue filmmaking. He goes to high school here, I think, now for film, and he's like
Oh
acting
wow.
more. Yeah, and
Oh wow.
Abigail, yeah, and Abigail is, I think, backstage. She's like acted a lot in some commercials and like Sesame Street. And then Fanny was also backstage, so they're like local actors.
Oh wow, that's great. Yeah, so it sounds like it was a big sort of turning point for a lot of the young cast. Malaya, what was it like for you when you got the call, when you got the script, and when you started filming? What was your sort of experience?
Yeah, so basically for the audition, we didn't use the script for the film. I'm not really sure where it was from, but it was a whole different scene. I remember the scene was like, it was really like teenage girl vibes because it was like a fight between her and her parents. And I think it was just like reading that, it was like, oh, like it's kind of relatable a little bit because, like, of course, like as a teenage girl, I always fight with my parents, fight with my brother, but like at the end of the day, like we all want what's best for one another. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. So then basically I did the audition, and then we got the script for the real film. And I was like, wait, I actually really, really like this. Because I felt like the whole vibe of the movie was kind of like that. Like the like just a normal girl who just like wants to belong. It's a very simple story, but it's so deep too. And I also just really like the whole vibe. I really like how like everything was so 90s and so like vintage. I already told Holly this, she definitely knows, but and I just really liked it a lot. And I actually wrote a song based on the script because I just really liked it a lot. And so I played it in my self tape, and Holly listened to it, and we ended up having it recorded and produced for the film. And I just think that was really cool. It was the first time singing for a soundtrack of a film. And also, I really love New York. So, like, going there was like just like it felt like home. And I think it was just like so fun. It was definitely like one of the best experiences I've had, and it was so uplifting, like seeing all these amazing like Asian women working on this project because almost all the crew was Asian women, and I think that was just like the first time I've seen like so many of us like going together and making something beautiful. And I just think that was like so uplifting to see. And it really just gave me so much confidence and so much joy. I really felt comfortable shooting the film because everyone there was so nice. And yeah, it was just really amazing.
Oh, that's great. Um, it's interesting to hear you say that it was a lot of Asian cast and crew, and female as
Yeah.
well. Um, so, Holly, what is sort of your background, and like how much did you sort of incorporate that into the story? And yeah,
I mean, so like culturally specifically, or
yes.
okay, yeah. I mean, I think like it was like very inspired by like my personal life and experiences for the character of like Rosie and her family. So like I'm mixed and my mom she's from Hong Kong, so it's Cantonese. And it was really challenging actually to cast Rosie's mom, who Fanny plays, to find a Cantonese speaking like actor fluently. Fanny's from Hong Kong, so she like speaks fluent and reads and writes, like everything is like she's really great, and like she helped a lot I think on set. And also our production designer Michelle Moy, I went to high school with Michelle, and Michelle also comes from a Cantonese family. So working with Fanny and Michelle, like we're Asian woman again, and was like very very helpful for crafting like a very specific cultural reference for like a Cantonese household. Even though we didn't film like in their home, it's like in a dry cleaner, which like her family owns, that has like references to like her home life, like all these elements, you know, in the production design and with the food that's like shown in the film, all the props, like every prop and like art piece is so like culturally specific that I felt like it was really easy to work with Michelle and Fanny, where they like understood like these things that were helping paint a picture about this character. So like it was like very culturally specific, I'd say, to like my like part of my background, and like to referencing like my mom and her family when she was growing up.
Right, right. Yeah, and you definitely see elements of that reflected in the script and as well. Um, Malea, what's your background and how much sort of your experience were you able to sort of put into your role?
Okay, so I'm Chinese Indonesian, and I think honestly, like just like seeing like the set, like Holly said, like everything was like it just felt so like Chinese in a way where like when I saw it, it was like, oh, like that's so cute, you know? And like also like this like story wise, like just like the whole character, I feel like especially like she's an Asian girl in New York City in the 90s. And I mean, of course, I feel like what she did was definitely wrong seeing from like now, but like I don't blame her. Honestly, like if I was in her shoes, like these two really cool American boys are accepting her and like want to be her friend. And like I feel like it's just so amazing how in this film you can see like her like kind of dilemma where it's like I really want to be like accepted. I want to belong with these guys, but also like she doesn't want to like betray her family too. Even though it may seem like just like a small conflict, I feel like just like as an Asian girl, it's like it hits, you know, just watching it. And I think that was like something that I saw and it was like I really, really like this film because it's so beautiful in a way that's so simple because it really like you can really feel what Rosie is feeling, even if it's just in a small way. And just going back to like being Asian, like I think that was just so cool because of course like it's getting way better now. I think definitely it's way better than how it was in the film, but um it is sometimes really hard to belong, not even just as an Asian girl, as like a teenage girl in general. Like I think just everyone's goal is to fit in now. Like it's always just like to be like your friends. And I think I see how Rosie is feeling. And that was just something that I really, really was grateful that Holly could feel that way too and express it in her writing. And I think that was just so amazing.
Yeah, you definitely get a sense of sort of code switching in a
Yeah.
way. And it's interesting because along with this film, I'm also writing about another film in the festival called Ashima, which is about another young girl around the same age who's also Asian American. has a lot of sort of uh, things in her life that are sort of influenced by her parents, definitely. And there's a line in your film, I actually wrote it down. Your family is your strength and your weakness. That really sort of like stood out to me. And I was wondering if Holly, you could sort of speak to that and sort of speak to the sort of cultural push and pull. I think that what your film sort of like depicted for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the cultural push and pull is definitely like the backbone of like the story, or Rosie's like moral dilemma in the story itself. And I think like that, so that quote was shared with me from a mentor actually that I had in my NALEET program, that it's a rough translation of a Mandarin proverb that someone had to memorize, and it was shared to me because they had read the script, and it was like I was trying to work, I was working on writing the voiceover at that point, and I was like trying to boil down the push and pull into a quote or like a sentence, and then they had like shared this proverb that was memorized, and it was like this light bulb moment where I was like, this is exactly like what I was looking for, like to describe this emotion, like this feeling, the whole like message of the film. And so like it's like kind of a rough translation of this proverb that I think is like the message of the entire story. And that's like something that I think is extremely personal and relatable to like Asian Americans. And like the reason why I really wrote this film actually was kind of working through that idea, like in my own personal life, even as like an adult, like that still is something that is like something that follows you even when you're no longer a teenager. Like it still affects your life.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. It was interesting because it sort of bookended with the other film that I'm reviewing. It just kind of stood out to me more and more thematically. So yeah, so it's interesting to sort of see it through the lens of a young girl. Um, so yeah, so was there a sort of a reason why you chose to sort of spotlight sort of this sort of moment in this girl's life where she's at this age?
um yeah, I think like it's an interesting question because I'm like currently working on developing this into a feature film, and I think like that this moment that's picked specifically for like this film is like kind of, it boils down like the message of what Sunflower Girl is. And in like this moment, like kind of what Malea was talking about, is that like it's such a like subtle moment that happens, but it has so much gravity in it. It's like an everyday thing, but there's so many like internal decisions that are being made. And it's kind of like the first time in Rosie's life where she's like confronted with this choice, and is like recognizing that she wants to be her own person, and but at the same time there's like responsibilities and family is important, and it's like, but you can also kind of start getting away with things now that you're not so young. And so it's like you're testing the waters. Like it's like she's kind of like every choice she makes, she's like, oh, I got away with that, so like I could kind of push it a little further until that breaks. And it's like it's one of, it just reminded me of those times in your life where you encounter those for the first time. And I think that's why I picked this age, because like the stakes are lower in retrospect, like if you look back as an adult, like at this time of your life, or like a memory like that. But when you're that age, it feels like it's the end of the world. Like it's like everything feels really like high stakes, even though it's really not such a big deal. But it feels like every decision is so like weighty.
Emotions are magnified to a ten,
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
to the 10th degree, for sure. Um, so yeah, I just kind of want to get a sense of, this is being shown at an Asian film festival. You've sort of been showing it around all different festivals. How do you feel about sort of where we're at in terms of um, the climate of filmmaking and AAPI stories and representation as a whole?
I think that I think like recently, I don't know. I mean, maybe in like hindsight, there's going to be a term for like what this renaissance is. I feel like it could be like the Asian New Wave or Asian American New Wave or something. Like they're going to name this in like some film theory book. But I feel like, yeah, there's like a huge renaissance happening and it's amazing. But I was at that Asian Cinevision hosted like the Tribeca event for the API filmmakers at Tribeca that I went to, and they made such a good point there that I feel like I really agree with, and that I hope that this film is going to help change, which is that there is a lot of like representation going on, but it seems like it's happening a little bit more for like API men, where like it's still not so much like the like women or the actresses or non-men male identifying AAPI artists, where I never noticed that till they mentioned it. And I feel like I'm really committed personally as someone to telling like femme stories and focusing on like women's perspectives. So like that's my hope for the future. So yeah, I'm hopeful. I feel like we're not like 100% there. But I think like there's definitely like a renaissance happening, and I'm like really happy to be like a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the past couple of years or so, we've seen definitely a rise. Malea, sort of where do you see it from your end in terms of um, being a performer? Do you feel that um, more stories could be told, or where do you feel we're at?
Definitely do think that we're improving a lot. I feel like before, like I would always see like Asian characters were always portrayed just because they're Asian. Like I think that's something that's so interesting because um like a lot of characters that I audition for, it's always like this has to be Asian because like their character like probably does kung fu or something. Like I feel like it's always so stereotypical Asian, but now I feel like there's so many more stories that are being told now where it's like it's not like what people think of us anymore, and it's like some characters that are Asian, you can look at them and be like they're cool, like, and I think that's just so nice to see because I think a lot of the time, like for in the entertainment industry, it was always like Asian kid as like the smart like nerdy kid, but like now I just watched Never Have I Ever and I was like, that girl is so cool. And like I think it's just now seeing like these Asian characters are just getting so much more deeper into like just being a human instead of being an Asian person. I think that's just really, really cool. And especially like Sunflower Girl, just like seeing like the struggles of a girl in New York is just like amazing because you see the culture, but it's not just about her being Asian. It's about her being her. And I just think that's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, Asian, it doesn't being Asian can mean many things.
Yeah.
You can be a bad guy, good guy, you can be a skater girl.
Yeah.
Um, was there any sort of what was the decision in sort of making her a skater girl? Like, was there anything specific that went into that? Did you know anyone, Holly, that was sort of within that world, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always say that Rosie is like the character of like a girl that I like wish I could have been as cool as when I was that age. Like it was based off of me, but she was definitely cooler than me. Because like I did try skating, like I was into like rollerblading and I had a skateboard, but I was not as good as her at it. And I always like wanted to skate more, but I think I was intimidated and afraid of like like the boys in the film were like the boys like in real life I was like afraid of, like, oh, they're gonna like bully me, they're gonna like make fun of me or something, because like I did know these kinds of people, and so it's like I did, but like kind of secretly, because I was like scared of being bullied by them. So yeah, it was like based off of people I knew and like my life, but definitely not as like embedded in it as Rosie like is in the film, which I think is just a cool character and like world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, she is a cool character for sure. Um, so yeah, I think I have everything that I sort of need in terms of the background and everything. Um, Thank you again for sitting with me. Thanks, Malea, for calling in all the way from LA.
Oh, thank you so much.
Um, we're sorry that you're not gonna be able to come, you said, to
Yeah,
this training. Oh
I was
no.
there.
Um, okay, well, we'll definitely be having you there in spirit for sure. And yeah, thanks again, Holly, for coordinating this. And yeah, hope to see you at the screening. And yeah, thanks again. Um, and good luck with your film.
Yeah, thank you so much
Thank you
for
again
having us.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
thank you so much.
You can follow Holly on Instagram at holly.miken, as well as Malea at MaleaEmma. For those in the Boston area, you can catch a screening of Sunflower Girl this Friday at the Boston International Kids Film Festival. For more info, see bikff.org/schedule. Cultivate is produced, presented, and conceived by Jessica Taghap and is a resident artist production. Our intro music is by Boden Kuzman, and our outro is by Taffy Rhythm. New episodes are available every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Substack. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at CultivatePod and get updates on residentartists.substack.com. I'm Jessica Taghap, and until then, keep on creating.